How are you? Welcome to Critical Moves of Telesur. This is 16 years after beginning the invasion to Iraq, a country whose independence is still not yet totally clear. There's a social uproar, and they all confront the government. In what context do these confrontations come? Does it come from the popular sector, or is there black hand in this? Let's begin our critical moves. How did the protests begin? Well, let's say that they began on internet by citizens that demand better services, more work, and the end of corruption. Ever since they began October 1st, there have been more than 100 dead and thousands have been injured. The opposition and the president signed agreements that also include reform packages. Let's hear what the protesters say. The protesters have done so for 7 days. Nothing happened. They didn't fulfill our expectations. We want the government to leave. We call to the people and the military to fight with us. Our revolution will go on until the government falls. Regardless of the state of emergency, we will continue to protest. They have arrested our people. They've done things to people that they've never done to anybody else. They hit them. They humiliated them. What are we doing? We are suicidal attackers. We are here to defend our rights. They shoot us. We're pacific manifestators. They shoot us. They don't do it against the Daesh. They do it against us. The maximum authority of Iraq says that the government has not fought corruption enough and asks all of the powers, the three branches, to apply reforms. Let's see what the authorities of this Arab country say. We express the protest, our right to demand what they're asking for. We call on the government and the judicial system to bring forward an investigation of everything that happened in the protests and reveal those who ordered to open fire against the protesters and go after them, detain them, and take them up to the trial. This must be done in a brief time. It must not take too much time. The attack on the forces and the attack on the reporters and journalists is unacceptable. Not in a country where the liberties and rights are maintained. Iraq will open an investigation on the causes of violence that happened during the last days and will take procedures to determine what are the mechanisms to avoid the use of excessive force based on the principles of international law and protect the rights of the people to protest in a pacific way. We reject the violence, and we are with the demands of the opposers, and we support our defenses. I invite you to check the digital websites. Let's see what Sputnik says. Protests in Iraq, the authorities of Iraq lift to a maximum alert. And they have now lifted it due to the manifestations. According to Alsmaria, that is speaking about this decision has been made because there has been stabilization in the area. There was an austerity package, and there was a concession of housing, subsidies, social help for people of low income, as well as training, professional training, and create more jobs. Let's go to Telesur. Also says that There has been reports of wives of the Daesh that has been taken to elsewhere. 50 wives of the Islamic group has been taken elsewhere, and they have been sent to Iraq from the U.S. Military base to the northeast of Syria. At the same time, there have been attempts of Washington to make the people of Daesh come into Iraq, where the group has been defeated, thanks to the effort of the Iraqi militia.
Denominadas al-Hajjat al-Shabi en árabe y sus aliados.
Now let me recommend the analysis of this long article of Alfredo Leal that has been published in Hispan TV. It is Iraq under the dirty hands of U.S. For those of frail memory, and the date of 2003 is too far away, it's necessary to recall that Iraq is a country that doesn't have sovereignty of their country, with foreign troops that have bases in their country without permission of the government, and that keeps on having terrorist attacks that have been organized and financed and protected by those who invaded the country or gave their support. Let's not forget that in the Kurdistanish area, there are military bases with U.S. militaries that train the militia, and that there are permanent pressure on the central Iraqi government, be this on the oil reefs or with the opposition. For Iran, it's evident that the violence in Iraq are dictated to divide both countries. I quote, "Iran and Iraq are two nations that their hearts are joined. This tie will become stronger day by day." Close quotes. This is said by the Ayatollah Khomeini. Then he continues to say, all of the roads take to Rome, but no, not to Rome, to Washington. There will still be uproar because of the demands of the people, which are fair. They need more jobs, diminish the cost of life, and fight against corruption. They were not unjustified demands. But this does not justify the actions that caused the death of more than 100 people, showing that behind these mobilizations there was a plan to destabilize that goes beyond the reforms that will favor the Iraqi people. It was evident that the manipulation and the intoxication of information, both regional and the hand of Saudi Arabia, as well as by Israel, along with Western news media from U.S., Great Britain, and France, had as the purpose to manipulate and disinform, but also to join forces to create an instability environment and to do bad with the work of the Iraqi government. So it's necessary to put this context in the current affairs. Hisham Wanouch from Damascus will give us his point of view. He is our correspondent for the Middle East. Hi, colleagues. Welcome. In fact, October 1st, there was a wave that began in that date against the government that throughout a week have resulted in over 165 deaths, according to the Ministry of Health of this country. These manifestations continue in Baghdad and other cities of the country. The United Nations said that Iraqi government has attacked the people. However, the government rejects this affirmation, and they say that shooters were shooting against the manifestators, and that this was behind the increase of victims. The answer to the popular demands on October 9th, the Parliament of Iraq approved a second package of reform to relieve the destruction done by the popular uproar. This includes the suspension of the 19 committees until the 2020 elections, loans that are favorable to the owners of factories, and support to the unemployed and the students. Experts that have been consulted explain that these manifestations, regardless of how legitimate they are, they have been taken advantage by foreign powers, basically by the U.S. and Saudi Arabia and Israel, Kuwait and Emirates, to destabilize the Iraqi government that works against the will of Washington. This in terms of managing their own oil. The current government is opposed to the blockade of the U.S., and they have established exchange with other countries. However, with Syria, there has been an open door once again of a commercial route. This establishes a route of commercial which will reduce the negative effect of the U.S. blockade imposed on Damascus. Baghdad also makes ties with Russia to buy their military equipment, and at the same time they have a commercial relationship with China in terms of the reconstruction of their country. The most important thing is the just cause of in the position of supporting the Palestinian people and rejecting the agreement of the century. This foreign policy has opened all of the uproar of the U.S., which is mad at Iraq, and they probably were the ones who put in the infiltrators that have caused all of the damage. This is all of the information we have for now. Back to you. Thank you very much, Hisham. This is very well in tune to what we were talking. This was our colleague Hisham Buenus. Here comes our question online. You can participate. Why has the United States not left Iraq after 16 years that beginning their invasion? Who's their next objective? We're going to go to a pause and we'll be right back. We are worried because there are reports that there have been abuses of some of the forces there, and they have sent gas here against the protesters. The UN has confirmed the death of 2 people in Baghdad. We call on the Iraqi government to allow them the right to protest. Well, this is what the High Commissioner of Human Rights over the recent protest in Iraq, a country that West took over allegedly to help their people. But how did this invasion begin 16 years ago? And what came afterwards? Let's recall. March 20 of 2003, a coalition of countries under the power of the U.S. invaded Iraq. The reason by the then President George Bush's son was their possession of weapons of mass destruction on behalf of Saddam Hussein. Under my orders, the coalition forces began to attack the objectives selected to do away with the capacity of Saddam Hussein. All of the men and women of the armed forces of the U.S. in the Middle East, the peace isn't at risk, and the hope for a tarnished government, a tarnished people, is in our hands. Our enemy has no respect for international law, and they use as human shields children and innocent women. We are going to Iraq for the respect for their great civilization and their people. We have no ambition in Iraq except to do away with the threat and restore the control of their country. However, a short time after, it was confirmed what everybody thought. Iraq did not have that arsenal of weapons. This had just been an excuse. David Kai, an inspector of the U.S., was the first one to admit that the White House had made a mistake. All of the reports sent by the UN showed that Iraq had no weapons of mass destruction, were not heard. The pretext of Washington was the attempt against the Twin Towers on September 11 in 2001, and the doctrine of the preventive strike. What they wanted to do was take over the economic resources and expand their geopolitical power in the Middle East. The Pentagon sent thousands of soldiers in the beginning of 2003. In 2003, there was also a meeting of the presidents of Spain, Portugal, U.S. to tell Iraq about the invasion. On May 20th, the invasion began. The White House withdrew on December 31st of December of 2001. This put the country in a profound crisis. More than 100,000 civilians and also military people of both sides lost their lives. It's a moment to go to analysis. Here we have from Spain, José Luis González Pérez. He's an international expert. How are you, José Luis? Thank you very much. Pleased to have you. Well, as you can see, we are now talking about the recent protests on behalf of the people that are being held in Iraq. Let's say that the axis of this is that they demand from the country several things. Let's not forget that most of the people who are protesting are young people. It has all been organized through the internet. Don't you think this looks like another attack? Of course. You can say that everything is very confusing, but it's very probable that the agents from Israel and the U.S. are taking advantage to throw out, to produce the downfall of Iraq. However, we cannot be sure to what point the revolts are organized by the U.S. or they're just taking advantage of the legitimate protest of the young people and they just get in it. When we see that the problems are corruption, unemployment, lack of opportunities, but there are also posters that criticize the influence of Iran over the country. However, something surprised me of this revolt, that apparently are spontaneous, but they never are. Luis, we're talking to Juan Luis González Pérez. We had to interrupt it for a second to show our public a geopolitical location that we've done of Iraq. Let's see. Iraq, battleground for the U.S. militaries, formerly known as Mesopotamia, now Republic of Iraq. It's a country of the Southeast Asia and takes over most of the north part of Zagreb. It has limits to the south with Kuwait and Saudi Arabia, to the west with Jordania, northeast Syria, north Turkey, and to the east with Iran. Tigris and Euphrates cross the country with a surface of 438 square kilometers. It has as a capital of Baghdad. It has a stretch of coastal area that has been desired by most of the powers due to the oil resource underneath it. It has on itself one of the biggest reserves of oil, and it is also part of the OPEC, and it was in Baghdad where this entity was formed. Among other resources, it has phosphate, natural gas, and sulfur. Iraq is the 11th most unstable country in the world. Ever since the war began in 2003, there was a world coalition led by the US and UK, has been the one who have taken over the country. And in Iraq, there are 14. The green zone located in the middle of Baghdad that holds the embassies of Baghdad, of the U.S., Camp Victoria, which is located 5 kilometers away from the international airport of Baghdad. Campo Fallujah in Ambar, their location is not clear. Anaconda, these are the places of the military bases. Camp Taji, and they're in the governorship of Saladino, 40 kilometers away from Baghdad. Place Liberty in Mosul, Maris Camp, Falul Base Ali. In the governization of Kirkuk, we have Renegado Camp. And there are other military bases with no identification. Una base militar sin identificar, ubicada entre las gobernaciones de Erbil y Kirkuk. Una base militar en Rumania. This is a military base in Romania. Gobernación de Ambar, muy cerca de la frontera con Siria. This is very near Saudi Arabia, Syria. A menos de 100 kilómetros de Siria. Another element that we cannot leave behind is what the Iraqi government has done to reinforce their security and that of its territory. Who are the new allies in terms of weapons? In the attempts to get away from the weapons market that the U.S. has established, the government of Iraq has opened the way to alliances with countries that have developed top-notch defense weapons. This year, from the Defense Parliament of Iraq, there was intention to diversify the supply of the weapons and give them Chinese, Japanese, and Russian and South Korean weapons. This has been a business that has grown and grown throughout the years. With Russia, it has been clear that there is an intention to create an S-400 defense system by which U.S. has threatened to apply the AXA war. And this is that there might be sanctions, basically economic, from the Iraqi parliament that has said that due to all of the things that the U.S. has done and not giving them on time all of the weapons, the balance is a bit more towards Washington, and they will have to break all of these ties of control. As we told you, we were talking to Juan Luis Rodriguez Perez. He is an international analyst, and apparently now we have our signal back. Well, as we said before, you were talking about facts that call for a need of
la falta de lucha que ha habido por parte del gobierno contra la corrupción,
the lack of fight of the government against corruption and creating new jobs. These are reivindications that the people are demanding. And based on this reality, the government itself has recognized these shortcomings, and they are willing to work on these problems. Well, we have to bear in mind that the invasion of the U.S. supposed a breakage with the previous program by eliminating most of the people. So it's been necessary to start this country from zero, because it's everybody who were eliminated or isolated from the public sphere. So to start with a country with so many opposers of destruction, where the government is still leading. And of course it's not necessary, but we do have this evidence that there's been corruption, and the money of the oil that went to the country was then redirected elsewhere, and the people never received social benefits, or, for example, the quality of life. And then there are several reasons in these fights. Many of the protests have not been violent, and this is you can see this. We can see that we have a family picture. So what we're saying is that there might be something behind all this. There are also elements, groups that are interested in destabilizing the government. One of these elements, many of the analysts agree that who leads this destabilization is the U.S. itself. What we saw is that the alleged goals that George Bush had set, and then he attacks Iraq. This is an invasion that it maintained itself in this nation. Well, the United States still conserves 6,000 or 7,000 soldiers in their country. Everybody knew that this thing of the weapons was totally fake, and what he was really going to do was to go there to take over the oil. However, the situation is of majority of Shiite. And at the end, it's been China that, through their strategy and without seeking for looking for allies, they've been able to penetrate. And yes, they have done away with most of the reserve against the oil reserve. And I think that the U.S. is still there with intentions to try to control this uproar. But let's not forget that most of the people here are ready for the war. So United States, this is very strategic. They will not leave this alone unless the cry of the people is being heard, because everybody knows that the U.S. is using the Islamic State to pursue their interest. Now what we see nowadays is that the attacks are going on one day yes, another way no. What we see is that the Islamic leaders are following us. And they want to see that they want to control this area. And of course, each time it has less real influence and capacity to influence the country. Let's speak about, we're reading
poníamos a consideración de nuestra audiencia, nuestra casa informativa Telesur, denuncian traslado de esposas de Daesh desde
there has
Siria
been a transfer
hacia
of the
Irak.
50
Medios sirios
wives
confirman el
of
traslado por
Daesh
parte de Estados
have been
Unidos de
sent
50 esposas de los miembros del grupo autodenominado Estado Islámico hacia Irak.
to
Usted,
Iraq.
repito, se estaba refiriendo
You
brevemente a
can,
eso, pero
you
quiero
probably
robarle un
mean
par de
of the
minutos más para
of the
indagar
couple of more minutes that we
respecto
have
a
to
esta
ask you
cuestión
about
que
this
preocupa a no
that
pocos
worries not
en la
little, not
región.
few, many
La
in the area,
presencia
the
aún del
presence
autodenominado
of
Estado
the
Islámico,
U.S.
ahora trasladándose de Siria a
Now,
Irak,
after
nada más y
going
nada
from
menos que
Syria
por
to
parte de
Iraq,
Estados Unidos,
on
los que
behalf of
dicen que
the
erradicaron al
monster.
Estado
So what
Islámico,
they
porque eso es lo
say
que
is that
decía
they
el
have
presidente Donald
eradicated
Trump
the Islamic
semanas atrás.
State. This is what Donald Trump said a couple of weeks
Bueno,
ago.
de las palabras de Donald Trump no nos podemos fiar, primero porque no tiene palabras, no las suele mantener 2 días seguidos, pero luego por las interpretaciones tan extrañas que hace de
we
lo que ha
cannot
sucedido en la región, ¿no?
believe that they are not listening all of the
al
sides.
Estado
On the
Islámico no ha
contrary, they're
sido
just
Estados Unidos,
listening
sino que ha
to
sido
what Russia
fundamentalmente
says.
El ejército sirio, las milicias de
So,
Irak,
the
con el
militia
apoyo
of
fundamentalmente de la aviación
Iraq,
de
with the
Rusia y el
support
apoyo
of the
de
Russian
Irak y de
and
Irán, y de Hezbollah, que
Iranian
son los que
forces
han prácticamente acabado con el Estado Islámico. Simplemente Estados
have
Unidos
done
lo
away
que
with
estaba
this.
haciendo es que antes de que se reconquistaran zonas,
Before
el poder
the
del
era
Estado
was
Islámico intentaba meter ahí
reconquered,
a la fuerza de mercenarias kurdas, que ahora
we-
están pidiendo ayuda
we
a
got
Rusia
the Fox
y a
to
Siria,
bring back
lo
a
intentaban meter allí
wildcat.
para controlar los recursos petroleros para que Siria
And what
nunca
they're
se
doing
pudiera,
there is they're trying to
defender, ¿no?
contain
O sea, que realmente Estados Unidos
their
siempre está
actions so they can
utilizando
control
el
the,
Estado Islámico
the oil
en su
price.
beneficio. Y
The
como
U.S.
decía,
has
desde el
always used
Parlamento,
Islamic
desde
State in their
parlamentarios, desde,
benefit.
proposiciones
And from the
parlamentarias que se hacen en el
parliament
Parlamento de Irak,
of
han llegado
Iraq,
múltiples
there have been
denuncias de que Estados
many
Unidos iba
reports that the U.S.
los jefes del
always
Estado
went.
Islámico estaban rodeados y
And they
podían,
were
caer
surrounded.
definitivamente en manos
And of course
de
it
las
could
fuerzas
fall
de
in
el terrorismo. Llegaba a
in
Estados
the
Unidos
Sea
con una
Force,
serie de helicópteros. Absolutamente sin
protect
ningún
these
tipo
people.
de identificación, y estaban llevando a esos líderes del Estado Islámico de un sitio a
And
otro.
what they were doing is taking their leader from one place to another.
O incluso de Afganistán, lo están moviendo
They're
para
moving
que
him
ellos sigan trabajando para
so
Estados
they
Unidos,
can
como lo han
keep
hecho
on
siempre,
working
no
like
es
they've
nada
always
nuevo.
done.
Y ahora se prevé que algunos de los
It is foreseen that some of the Islamic or the people of the Islamic State
que se hayan podido poner en libertad por ataques de Turquía, etcétera, pues es muy probable que acaben llegando a Irak y
turn
bueno,
up
ya he
appearing in
escuchado,
Iraq,
ya he leído
and
en algunos
you've
sitios que
already read
reforzando las fronteras para
that they
que
are now
esto no
reinforcing the
Juan Luis,
borders.
un millón de gracias por
Juan
habernos
Luis, thank you
esperado
very much.
durante varios minutos para
Thank you for
reconectarnos
waiting
y
so we can
terminar este
reconnect
análisis,
and
que
to
tanto nos ha
make this
aclarado.
analysis
Gracias,
that
hasta la
has been
próxima.
so clarifying for us.
A la orden.
Juan Luis González. Y antes de ir a la pausa, le voy a invitar a visitar
And
el
before we
globo
go into the
terráqueo,
pause,
porque siempre
let's
los
go
mapas
see
nos
the
dicen,
world
¿verdad?
map.
Aquí, por ejemplo, si hacemos
Now
un
we see,
acercamiento a
let's
esta
go to a
zona
zoom
del
to
Oriente
this
Medio, vemos
to this
que Irak
area.
se localiza
We
en
have
esta
that
parte,
Iraq is
¿verdad?
located here
Pero
in this
veamos a quién
part.
tiene como vecina.
But let's see who it has
Irán.
as a neighbor. Well, it's
Cierto, al
Iran to
Al
the
oeste,
east, to the
y esto está muy en
west.
sintonía con lo que decía Juan Luis, tenemos a Siria.
We have Syria.
Al norte
To the north,
Turquía.
we have
y
Turkey.
al sur, lo
And to the
decíamos
center,
en nuestro mapa, tiene
we said
una pequeña salida
there is a
al
little
Golfo Pérsico.
dent
Por supuesto,
out to
que al sur
the
también tiene
Indic
a
Ocean.
Arabia Saudita, fiel aliada de Estados Unidos. No perdamos de vista
Let's not lose
ese particular.
this
El mapa
idea
nos
that
dice
the
mucho, nos habla de cómo
that
se va
this little
desenvolviendo
young
la
lady is-
geopolítica realmente.
we can see how the
salió
geopolitics are
Estados
doing.
Unidos de
Did
Siria,
U.S. leave
siendo
Syria?
vecina de Irak, al trasladarse Estados Unidos
When
a
they
los,
went to the United
miembros
States
del autodenominado Estado Islámico
to the
que decían
Islamic
haber
State
derrotado,
that they
los
had
está
said that they had
trasladando a esta
they had
vecina nación,
defeated,
y
are they
teniendo
taking them
tantas
to the
bases militares
neighboring
en esta
country and
vecina
having
nación,
so many
realmente
military
Estados
bases?
Unidos perdió el
Does the
control
United
de
States
Siria.
have they already
¿Cómo tiene
lost
Estados
control of
Unidos
Syria?
a la vecina Irán,
How
vecina de
does
Irak,
U.S.
quiero decir,
have Iran?
cómo está
What is
apoyado
the
por
current
Arabia Saudita al
situation?
sur,
How is
Turquía al norte, que por un lado se presenta como su
how
enemigo,
does
por
Turkey
otro lado
present
vemos
itself
que
as
hay
a
una serie de
friend?
sanciones entre,
On the other
Estados
hand,
Unidos
there's a
y Ankara.
manifesto
Todo eso
of the
vamos a
differences of the
valorarlo al
U.S.
regreso de la
and
pausa con otro invitado
and
que tengo acá.
the island. We're gonna go right back.
Antes de pasar al análisis,
Before we go to the analysis, I invite you to reflect why
la política exterior de Estados Unidos
have the
respecto
foreign
al
policy of
Oriente
the
Medio
U.S. Been of these characteristics. The attack on the Twin Towers of September 11 was the beginning of the policy of chaos that was established by the U.S. in the Middle East. It consists to divide these countries and to destabilize them, to weaken them, and to enforce their law. Their camp is from Lebanon to Afghanistan, passing Palestine, Syria, Iraq, and Iran. The White House sought to divide Syria in 5 states and Iraq in 3. This policy included nations that were at the time their allies, like Turkey. In Libya as well as in Syria, the excuse has been the same: the presence of terrorist groups that the U.S. had the right to combat. To apply this thought, there is a strategic alliance with Israel that has gone further with the arrival of Donald Trump to the presidency. For example, they said that the heights of Golan that was taken from Israel to Syria is part of Israel, and this violates a UN disposition. The community of nations criticized his affirmation. Now the U.S. accepts the loss of control of this part of the world. Trump says that the worst mistake that Bush made was to get into this area. He said the same of Barack Obama. What Trump says is referring to the high cost for the American people. Let's continue analyzing. Here we have Gabriel Aguirre. He is the president of the defense policy. We were listening to the last part. As we know, Trump has said that the previous administrations of George Bush have spent too much money. It has cost too much to the U.S. However, there are other realities that the U.S. will not leave. Well, undoubtedly, what we should do is to put in context the foreign policy of the U.S. And we have to see this in the framework, in the imperialistic competency. And what they want to do is control the petroleum and gas of the world. And definitely, in this area, there is 70% of the concentration of oil. Iraq is the second producer of oil. So, of course, the corporations of the U.S. need to take over those resources. This was the excuse that they used in 2003, the invasion of Iraq, and consequently to have a military presence and geographical presence in this part of the world. With the greatest lie in the world, where there was weapons of mass destruction that were never shown, and they themselves have admitted that they did not exist, but was the main reason to justify their military presence in the area. What has happened in that region is with the policy of the U.S. to fragment territories, to fragment the houses of these people, and therefore take over these spaces. Of course, what we see now is that Trump says that to being in this area of the world is a bad business. But what are the big objectives of the country? In the second place, to take over the control of the strategic resources. And we can say that there are military zones near the strategic oil. But there's also the topic of national restriction. Let's analyze what happens. And we must we can see now that Iraq has a different policy that now defends the national interest, and of course the U.S. Rejects these interests because they're not submissive to the U.S. interests. So, although they're capitalists, they do not align to the U.S. interests. So, this is why they go with other. Right, to understand the national interest, to try and destroy. We can say that Iraq, who has of irregular weapons, of regular military, what we can say is, of course, they are totally ready to shut and go. Well, let's not forget that the Islamic State has been pushed forward, especially where there is a country
que estaba a tan solo 20 kilómetros del principal campamento del Estado Islámico y nunca se combatió. Ahora, ¿qué es lo que existe de fondo?
What is there behind all of this?
Que Irak está sosteniendo
importantes
acuerdos comerciales y de cooperación
having international cooperative agreements.
En el caso de Irán, el comercio en el 2018 ascendió a 12.000 millones de dólares en el caso de Irán específicamente. En el caso de Rusia,
in the case of Russia, it has been established new agreements to reestablish the Russian oiling machine. In the case of China, it's another very important area because it's the topic of national reconstruction. There is another aspect. It was foreseen that the U.S. and some other companies were going to participate in their affair. However, the U.S. wanted to impose their interests, and some countries say no thank you, and they stopped this type of incursion, and they stopped to work with other segments of the society. There is a topic that is very important that has to do with the construction of two gas pipes that go from the south of south of Iran, all the way to the Persian Gulf. This is an American transnational that has established to do away with the company of Lorena and take it to the British Petroleum, that in any case belongs to the UK and another Italian oil company. So you can see how Iraq is diversifying their action in that region of the world. So it's not casual to come these protests that seem to follow the same strategy as the Arab Spring. We don't doubt that the people do need to improve their life condition. However, what is yet to be seen is who is behind these protests and what is their purpose. It is not just it's not all just of the dead people. It's not fair that most of the people died by shots to the head and the heart. So that's why they think that the people who killed the victims are shooters, professional shooters. And let's see all of the displaced people and all of the people who don't have a house. And what the press says is that maybe we should try to forget all of these military struggles. Of course, the great corporations that are part of the think tank that thinks just like him, what they do is they publish anything that they're interested in. It seems like that some dead are more important than others, and in the webpage of the country, it's the same thing. There are still many crimes against humanity. And now the country should keep on analyzing this and what is the need to come again. That it's not casual that the consulate of Iran was attacked during this repeal. In the month of May, there was going to be a preemptive strike, and this is to promote between these two countries that now have a great business And what they want to do is promote conflicts between countries with the objectives of to interfere in these conflicts and make this position even stronger. And of course, they want privileged. They want to take advantage of the weakest countries that are allies of the U.S. Well, now the interest of the U.S. is that the destabilization begin from inside, not through an adaptation. Well, this has been the policy of the U.S., and it's been the new format that they want to present in the countries that maybe are not necessarily a need to go in. For nobody, it's a secret that what today is the Islamic State are mercenary forces that were trained in different scenarios, and that are and what they're using now, the U.S. is trying to destabilize the countries and then take over the political control and, of course, obviously then the economic control. The reality of the Middle East that is very apart from us. Our regions particularly have a resource that's strategic in based on this resource, the format that has been applied in the different regions of the world, in the Middle East, and in the case of Venezuela, seem to be the same one. This is to push forward the armed groups and to denounce the country as non-respectant to the Charter of the United Nations. Based on these countries, there should be a change of the government, it has been done before. There's part of the discourse of Barack Obama who before visiting Cuba, when he did, and during the trip, the U.S. has said that doing away with the people in a violent way is not the best. So now that this strategy doesn't work, there should be other strategies. And this is what Obama understood, and he tried to work for the democracy in Cuba. Is this a line from the script of Barack Obama? Let's pay attention a little bit more, because in the text there is a new U.S. policy of not applying a hard hand, but of suppression. They did the same thing in Venezuela and Iraq. The plans of the U.S. are do not have a single approach. What they're trying to do is to take control of countries, to control over the resources of this country. That is their interest. In Cuba, it was very well explained. No es que cambiamos nuestra política hacia Cuba, solamente cambiamos el método. In that perspective is where the U.S. tries to practice the new forms. And this was there have been some textbooks made to make the new format of intervention in other countries of the world. We should go a bit more in depth of the new ways of war, to give them sanctions. Well, we as Venezuela have an awful experience, and as well as Cuba, because the blockade are the new format of war. These generate more deaths than the wars themselves. This is a very silent way to kill the people, take away their food, their medicine. This is part of the strategy of the United States. I don't think you can apply both things at the same time. I think that we do have to apply them all, but one day one, the other one another one.
Eso forma parte del paquete de acciones
This is part of the packages, and these are the areas where the United States is playing. So, from the movement of the defense of the peace, there has to be a pledge and to discover what are the main causes why U.S. creates so many conflicts all around the world. Thank you, Gabriel. Thank you very much for coming here and sharing with us what's going on in Iraq. Let's go to conclusions.
Documentaries presents A Nation's Struggle Seeking Conciliation.
Creo que hay que distinguir.
We're going to take the words of Pablo Nofre that suggests in his article is that the Iraqi people should put attention to those lines, to walk towards sovereignty, to recover their natural richness, to increase their relationship, and always be clear that Washington, Israel, Saudi Arabia, and their puppets are willing to put any type of pressure for Iraq not to have a sustainable development. Apparently, 16 years have not been enough to take away from this Arab country all of their richness. And it has not been enough because they have not been able to bend this country. This was the geostrategic objective of the White House. We closed our critical moves. See you tomorrow.